Housekeeping first. You know where the exits are? There are exits here, there are exits out the door. If anybody desperately wants to go to the toilet, out this door, turn left. Reporters and counsellors, have we got any in the room? Yes, good. This meeting is exclusively for concerned ratepayers, as clearly indicated on our invitation. They will get a time at a later date. I would like to thank Trident Electronics for coming on board with us, streaming this meeting and uploading it for us to a YouTube page. Also, not forgetting Max the Publican and his team for their hospitality and the use of this room. There will be a petition to sign at the next series of meetings to abolish the cycleways. Yes. This is for us to support Murray Chong to get it over the line. We are aiming for 10,000 signatures. Now, we all know why we're here. We need change around the council table, starting from the mayor down. We cannot do this on our own. We need your help. We are here as a collective group. However, we are all distinct individuals who have been impacted by rate rises. By standing together, we have discovered and developed a collective voice to address the issues we have with council. We have developed solutions to these problems, but they are indeed challenging solutions. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Debbie Hancock, and I'm standing for council by listening, leading and delivering. Come in. You're late.
Always.
Yes.
Got a note from your mum?
I was born and bred in Stratford, but have lived in the New Plymouth area for around 35 years. I currently reside in Bell Block. I have 2 children. One lives in the Auckland area and one lives in the Taranaki area. I also have 2 grandchildren who will be voting age this year, so at least I know I'll get 2 votes. I have owned my own business in the retail sector, so I know what I'm talking about when I say your outgoings cannot be more than your incomings, which we will demonstrate tonight. When I first came to New Plymouth, it was a beautiful, vibrant city. Now all I see are closed shops, dirt and neglect. I wanted to talk to you tonight about liars, cheats and thieves, but I got a hand slapping for that. So instead, I will focus on deception and lack of forthcoming information by the council. You are late too.
Oh, you can't keep saying that.
And you. All the older ones, eh? How many of you are fully aware of the consultation document that sits on the council website, which is detailing what they're proposing for the water infrastructure? How many of you have read, seen and understood the cost structure? No one, as there is no cost structure on that website. So council have not consulted on this. If they have, why aren't the figures out in the public forum? Because you, the ratepayer, might not like the cost totaled. History has shown this to be true. For example, the sports hub. That is deception. It is not council's money, it is our money. LTP, which equals long-term plan. A, the sports hub. B, the walkway. And C, oh, those cycle lanes. If there are no costs against these, how can we make informed decisions? Also, there's no option D, which is none of the above. So what are you selecting? Where is the cost structure? That is deception. Did you know that as ratepayers we're paying for rates and insurance on Marais? Yes, rates and insurance. Did you know the Len Lye Centre employs 48 staff for a business that's running at about $125,000 loss per week? It sits on council-owned land, which has conveniently been left out of the total development costings. That is lack of forthcoming information. This land was not accounted for when the cost went out to ratepayers. If that was our business, we know what would happen. We'd be bankrupt within a month. Did you know Pukeariki runs at a loss of around $175,000 per week? These, amongst others, are what we're finding out about. Where is the return on our money? Did you know that there are currently 1,500 people who can't pay their rates? This will rise come the 9.9% proposed rate hike the council is so proud of. Did you know at this stage the traffic lights they are installing on Robyn Street are going to cost the ratepayers in the vicinity of $8 million? We cannot provide answers for these until we have done what is called a forensic audit. This is an audit that goes way beyond the standard audit of council books. We need to know what council have done with the revenue from our targeted rates. Targeted rates are on your rates demand and can be for specific services for ratepayers in certain areas. Where are the accounts for these? Make no mistake, this is an economic and financial crisis, a crisis of our own making. It's not our children's and it's not our grandchildren's making. It is ours to own. We need to fix it before it's too late. How are our grandchildren meant to achieve home ownership when the rates and the water costs are so high? Now, these are our proposals. We're like a region of no other. Our goal is to have the lowest actual rate rise over the next 6 years. I personally would like to see a rates freeze. Like any good business, you operate within your budget. 2, cut back on services. Stop all vanity projects. It will cost us, and we will have contract breaking penalties, but these will be less than the cost to run these projects. Therefore, we, the ratepayers, will not be subjected to long-term debt. We must get our core debt down. It is $406 million and it's rising. There will be no spending on nice to haves. To quote Maurice Williams, council is there to collect rubbish and ensure that water services run properly. So our council need to focus on core infrastructure only. The Lenlie Centre is a bit of a hot potato. The council runs and has signed agreements to look after the Lenlie Foundation. Unfortunately, as a district, we cannot afford to pay the $125,000 a week for a facility that does not pay for itself. It employs 48 people and it is showing naught return on our investment. We need to seriously consider the ability to continue to have this centre operating. What are our options going forward? Reduced hours, weekends and public holidays only. Reduction in staff would be mandatory. We cannot afford to continue to pay $125,000 per week going forward. Council seems to think that we, the ratepayers, have a perpetual money tree. 4, amalgamate the Chamber of Commerce with Venture Taranaki to the floor above the council building that Powerco have moved out of. This is an empty floor. They currently pay $3.5 million in rent per year, which can then be paid to council. Once these objectives have been achieved, we can then get back to the nice to haves. If you want more of the same, vote the way you have always voted. If you want change, your answers are sitting here on the stage. We need your help. Can I I've got to make sure I say this properly. STV. Single transferable voting, which I will now show you how to strategically vote. STV, single transferable voting. Do not let anyone tell you that you need to vote for more than 5 candidates. You will hear this at other meetings. If you do that, your votes cannot have an effect. You are in effect watering down the votes. Those votes will then get transferred to candidates you do not want to get in. If there is anyone here who thinks that this is the way we should vote, you are in the wrong meeting. Let me be clear. I can't tell you how to vote, but if we want change, this is the plan. 5 votes, okay? You need to vote for Murray and Max. Love them or hate them, they are the ones talking the most sense around the table. Then the new candidates, 1, 2, 3. Otherwise, the same old will get in and we will have another 3 years of misery. I would like to invite 5 of the public up here so I can demonstrate STV.
5 volunteers, please.
5 volunteers. Front row, just come and stand up here. Thank you. Another 2. Don't be scared. Oh, good on you, Mark. Thank you. Thanks, Glenys. Here is your ballot paper. The counting process tallies first votes, first preference votes, right? A candidate is elected if they reach the threshold or quota of, say, for this demonstration, 100 votes. +1. The +1 is the seat that must be filled. The extra votes are then transferred to the voter's second preference. The votes are tallied again. If that candidate reaches a quota or gets more votes than needed, the extra votes will be transferred to the voter's third preference, and so on. If you haven't got any more votes, they cannot be transferred to candidates you don't wish to get in. If a candidate doesn't reach the threshold or quota, that candidate with the least number of votes is eliminated. The transfer of votes is done in the order of you, the voter's preference. Their votes are passed to the next preferences on the ballot papers, and the process starts again until you have the required number of candidates to fill the council table. This is why it is so important to vote for new candidates only. New. Any queries on this, please see me after the meeting. Now, I will demonstrate it for you. We've got 5 candidates. The threshold is 100 votes. So Glenys here has got 120 votes, so she's in. So you can go back that way. Congratulations, Glenys. Those 20 votes then get transferred to the next councillors. Next councillors on here. If nobody reaches that threshold, I don't need that. If nobody reaches that threshold, the lowest polling candidate is eliminated. So I'm sorry, madam, you're eliminated. You can sit down. Oh. Now those 50 votes she got are transferred to your next preference on your voting papers. Congratulations, Mark, you've got in. There is nobody else that has got in because the votes that were transferred only got Mark in. So once again, the process starts again. I'm sorry, Roxanne, you are the lowest polling candidate, so you are eliminated. See what I mean? Yeah. Those votes then get transferred to the next person on your voting paper. Julie, you got in! Surprise, surprise! Yes, thank you. The process carries on. If you only have 5 votes, that is all that can get in. They cannot pass any more votes down anywhere because you haven't voted. So what I'm saying is 5 votes, 2, Murray and Max, 3 new people. That's how we can get in. Yeah. stands at, come and see me afterwards and I will show you. Now, on a side note, please mark your calendars for our next meeting, which is on the 28th of May in Ōpra at the bowling club, starting at 6:30. Our guest speaker will be Max Bruff, who will share his visions for the future. Thank you. I would now like to introduce Mark to come up and speak. Thank you.
All right.
Also, somebody here, and I know I've mesmerised you all, have ordered a pork belly meal. I've got it under the lights if it's anybody that's forgotten.
Is it paid for though?
It's under the lights.
All right. Thank you very much, Debbie. So I'm the thorn between the two roses. Never mind. I've got big shoulders. All right. Everybody can hear me at the back? Cheap seats?
No.
Thank you very much.
Lift it up a bit. The mic.
Oh.
The mic.
Got my trousers falling in. How's that, Mark? Can you hear me now? Yeah, that helps. I'll work on that. All right. Evening all. I've got a big loud voice. I mean, I need this anyway. My name is Mark Costa. That's what Mum and Dad call me. A few people around the town call me other names, but they come to the territory. Bit of background stuff about me. Grew up here in New Plymouth, high school in the early 70s. Worked at the local county council. Then a stint operating dozers for the Forest Service down south before completing my first degree in anthropology and psychology at Otago University. Did a stint at law school, absolutely hated that. So, back in New Plymouth in the 80s, wife, make sure you get the order right, wife, yeah that's right, wife, kids, mowing the lawns on Sundays, and working locally here for the probation service for nigh on 20 years. All functional stuff, not unlike how the district council here is supposed to run. In between times, more academic stuff, which I am reasonably good at. A change in politics within the public service, again, a bit like councils, so time to get out and get out like that. Taught my skills and expertise elsewhere, another postgrad degree in occupational safety and health, some UK qualifications, and then end up commuting back and forth all over Southeast Asia as a consultant for a number of oil companies. So, you can take from all that, I learn and process at a reasonable level. Go ahead and ask around. I am many things. Being stupid is not one of them. In fact, sadly, I have a strong aversion to stupidity in its many manifest forms. Sadly, our current council seems to be taking this to a completely new level. So, relevance here. A long time working with legislation and systems and making them work efficiently and safely. I'm very good at what I do. That's me. Moving on, a few council projects. First one, the thermal dryer. Originally an upgrade to the New Plymouth wastewater treatment plant, which was built in 1984. Now, for those who don't know, the plant processes clean water and biosolids, which since 2002 have been treated by the thermal dryer, which in turn made into fertiliser and sold off to those who like gardening. That doesn't include me. But by 2020, the plant was on its last legs. Hey, 2020, we'll remember it's COVID time, and along comes Shane Jones dishing out borrowed money. Estimated, firstly, to cost $43 million all up. Government came to the party with 37 million of that. But here we go. By 2022, it eventually revealed that ratepayers would have to cover the cost of a $14 million budget blowout. Fast forward to last month, when council meet again behind closed doors to discuss more budget blowouts. Closed doors. Not hard to comment, even if we don't have all the details. This is just not $1 or $2 million over. This is $10, $20, $30 million over. Basic project oversight and management. Who has resigned or been sacked from council. Provisions within any contract, building a house within any contract, should both cover and control any small overrun. That's how it works. Any court cases looming, who knows? This is incompetence on a huge scale. And thank you very much. We're all paid. Moving on. So, you cannot not have noticed the headlong rush of work on Devon Street West between Morley Street and Barrett Road. I've never ever seen such work completed so quickly. I wonder why. So, 3.8 million for this project coming from NZTA and the previous government. This is not just New Plymouth, but several other cities around the country. Yeah, I have to apologise here. For me, I just don't buy the rhetoric about cyclist safety at all. A number of people have counted cyclists along this route. The number of bikes just do not justify the council overreach and NZTA overreach. Doesn't add up. The cycle lanes and the Tim Tam barriers are so wide, we already know that rubbish trucks cannot reach bins from the curb past the barriers. The deliberate bottlenecking of intersections, the yellow lines on both sides of the road, and taking out all car parks. Businesses are losing out big time. Residents and the public at large have hit these raised buffers. The only people happy with this nonsense is the council, the panel beaters, and the tyre companies around the town. We here have sat in on council and listened to people talking to council about losing $100,000 plus on trying to sell their house because suddenly there's no parking outside on the street. Graphics Print making a submission for a return of 3 car parks outside their business. Late March, and I quote, Councillor Clinton Goddess, now I'll get the voice right here, reinstating 3 car parks will be an example of piecemeal and poor decision making. What we need to be doing is making a decision about this project as a whole. And we've already done that twice. It's from council. And here I go again. Stupidity on a major scale. And I've been told this repeatedly. These people will not listen and just do not want to stop on this. Yeah. You might have read or seen or heard that some councillors lately actually thought this might go down and they can get away with all this without anybody noticing. Some now are trying to minimise and smooth the waters over on this issue. Must be election time. Right, too late. The damage has been done and, dare I say, they need to be gone. Simple. Enough. Okay, it's a bit of legal stuff. This is my forte. The Citizens Initiated Referendum Act 1993. Of course, you're all familiar with it. This allows for citizens to propose a referendum on any issue in which proponents have submitted a petition to Parliament signed by 10% of all registered voters. Some of you might remember the, this is going back to Andrew Judd time, when he first brought in the Māori wards, and people in New Plymouth, I mean Grey Power, actually did the same thing. Got together a referendum and that was overturned. But it's basically the same thing. There are people getting petitions, but they're all bringing them into council in dribs and drabs. It ain't going to work the way. Now, Debbie's already mentioned about getting one petition and doing it that way. That's just one strategy. Now, again, I've talked with a few people out in the audience. I'd rather not be organising rate power working bees to take out bits of concrete up and down the main street But if that's what I have to do, yeah, I can still swing a hammer, I can still drive a loader, I can take people driving a truck there, they will go one way or the other. Now, talking about things legal, another quick sidetrack. You all know about the referendum about Māori wards being held at the next local body election. Just to clear up a bit of confusion in some quarters. Even if the Maori wards do get thrown out come October, they will still remain in place around the New Plymouth Council table until 2028.
Why is that?
Government. Now, again, obviously we didn't know about it.
No.
I'm glad I mentioned it.
Bloody hell, that's disgusting.
The votes for the next 3 years.
That's what's happening. Now, again, welcome to New Plymouth. Alright, some more. Pearls of wisdom. Now, in addition to having a mayor and 14 elected councillors around the table, New Plymouth also has 20 community board members spread across the 5 wards. These people generally do a really, really good job. But current records indicate that New Plymouth District Council has about 530 full-time equivalent staff providing advice and information to elected members and the public. 530, that's what the record would say. But back in 2022-23, that number was as high as 858. I mention this as the number we were given was 530. It could be a whole lot more right now. We don't really know. So, of that 530, I've just been told, and I'm not playing the racist card yet, that 94 of these personnel are deemed cultural advisors. Now, how that happens, I don't know. It'd be unclear as to whether they are full-time in such advisory roles or part-time. Regardless of what you think about this, in my view, that's way, way too many. On a similar thing, going back, 15 December 2024, New Plymouth District Council seemingly voted on behalf of you all to send a submission to the Select Committee as regards their opposition to the Treaty Principles Bill. Now, think about that. A vote around the table sending a submission to the Select Committee. Now, I'm not too concerned about your opinions on the Treaty Principles Bill. That's your business. But I do consider it way outside Council's brief to be sending off submissions signed as New Plymouth District Council. So, a couple of weeks before this, a submission was made to District Council on Parihaka Pa and representatives from all the districts iwi to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. Yeah, okay, yeah. My reaction exactly. Again, whatever you think about what's going on in Gaza, so a submission came in, Parihaka, all iwi, about sending off a submission at the war in Gaza. Yeah.
But people have a right to submit a submission to council, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about things political. You know, we'll deal with it at the end. So, Mayor Holland also refused to accept a motion from Councillor Barley Hutt calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Again, such matters are, I believe, in a political arena far beyond what a district council should be dealing with.
Exactly.
Keep it simple. Rates, roading, rubbish, water and sewage. The basics. Leave the ideology to the idiots in Wellington. Okay. December 2020, another one. The Rainbow Crossing came about as a result of submissions being made to council by Rainbow Youth Taranaki and Pride Taranaki. And less than 12 hours later, a rainbow crossing appeared on the road. New Plymouth Mayor Neil Holden, again, in the paper, said the crossing, only the second permanent rainbow crossing in the country behind Wellington, sent a message to the LGBTQ community that it was valued and cared about. Again, I make a point, regardless of your personal view on such things, it doesn't matter. I do not believe it was the most open and upfront of decisions to basically dump it on the road without seeking some wider mandate, other than just from the LGBTQ community. Alright. Another contentious subject, rough sleepers, my specialty. So I actually stood up at council and made a submission on this issue. I told them, face to face, they were being incredibly naive and gullible. You think they could deal with some of the people in isolation to all the other baggage that came with them. Let's be very, very clear here. There are those who are homeless, and there are those who, excuse my language, are just taking the piss. Do you actually think genuine homeless people would be hanging out in the main street, drinking alcohol, smoking dope and getting weed? The real people in need are wanting to be helped. And there is a hardcore group who want the free food and all the sympathy, but insist on pleading themselves as to their behaviour. Yet, there still remains a lot of people in New Plymouth who believe if only they could get a bit of alcohol and drug counselling, a warm, dry house, and a little understanding, it would be all okay. Sorry, this is not my first rodeo. I'm here to tell you that you need to wake up and be able to clearly differentiate between the two. I do not agree that it is council's responsibility to try and step in where a number of government departments and social service agencies have essentially given up. You've all seen the figures in the paper, have you? Thank you very much, New Plymouth. $800,000 gifted to the YMCA. That's just a start. So, Kerry, Debbie and I have been down on a few occasions and spoken to some of these shopkeepers. Okay. So, how many councils have you seen? Oh, we've seen Maxwell, we've seen Murray Chong, and some guy way back about trading the street for Americana. That's it. That's it. Meeting since with the Mayor, the CEO and the Police Council. General public not invited. No, bit of an update. The council, as you may know, owns the Metro Plaza in town, where many of these rough sleepers hang out. They've terminated the lease with some of the shops in the mall. I suppose that's when they were dealing with some of the complaints. Anyway, so we have gone. Yeah, you already tell me that we've gone by the end of the month. The shampoo shop will be gone by October. Long term, the Metro Plaza will be demolished and open up the Huitaki stream on that side of the street. Solutions. There's a few. There is a bylaw available to the council. There always has been. They used it some years ago when they had the same problem at Victor Davies Park. If we have to give that bylaw some extra added teeth, let's do it. Councils have done this before. You might remember all the freedom campers down the Waimakawa River now, and around some of the reserves. Beefed up the law and made things happen. This issue with the rough sleepers has gone on and on and on for far too long. Now, I've covered a few issues. There are of course a whole lot more. Way more for us to try and cover here. The main point I want you to take away from me and my colleagues is that we are all grown-ups. And some of us older than others.
Let's not be.
All right. All of us have the skills to go to the Arab Street and say enough. Enough of the stupidity. Enough of the ideology and the nonsense. And enough of the current attitude of spending our money. The cold hard reality is that we need a clean out, a big one. Murray Chong and Max Cruff are repeatedly voted down over 95% of the time. Easy decision for you come October. Vote for more of the same, or vote for a big change around that table. Up to you. I'm not here to make you find God and do missionary work in the islands. Up to you. Anyway. Now my pleasure to introduce my all-time favourite maker of ginger crunch, Kerry Vosseler. Thank you.
Hi folks, I feel a bit like poor relation Thank you for coming along this evening. My name is Kerry Vosseler and I've been a New Plymouth resident and ratepayer for the last 40 years. Born and bred in Stratford, but I'm Taranaki through and through. I believe we have a unique lifestyle, particularly for the outdoorsy types. Great attractions such as the mountain, the rivers and the beaches. I can be found swimming a couple of kilometres out to sea over summer, and I've even avoided being shark bait and swum the Flanagan Cup a few times. I have a very supportive husband who has encouraged me in any venture I've entered into, and together we have two amazing kids, both of whom have had their own families. My husband, kids and grandchildren are the reason I'm running for council, to protect the New Plymouth that we have. For 30 years I've run businesses in New Plymouth, most recently Chaos Cafe, which I set up and ran successfully for 20 years before selling 18 months ago. Chaos thrived in a tough, competitive hospitality environment by careful management of finances. I would bring that discipline to council because right now New Plymouth District Council is failing us. They raised the rates well over and above the cost of living, driving some ratepayers to sell their homes or downsize. Local lawyers are reporting these struggles. Other ratepayers are choosing to sell their homes and live in motorhomes. The struggles are real. I've put my head above the parapet and I'm running for council because I believe the current council has no concept of working within budgetary guidelines, and every time they blow the budget, they put the rates up. In a real business, your customers would run in the other direction if your prices rose by the same amounts that council is raising your rates well over and above the cost of living. They put up rates because they have a captive payment pool. You guys, me, but they aren't spending our rates responsibly. This is why we need change, or living in New Plymouth will become more and more unaffordable. Beach Street residents are reporting rate rises of 48% in the last 2 years. And one Owatilla resident I've spoken to told me his rates went up 60% in the last 2 years. So our mayor stated that the average rate rises would be 9%. Even that is way too high. If some ratepayers are experiencing up to 60% rate rises in 2 years, someone is getting freebies, and as explained, I think we know where. So the New Plymouth District Council rebates marae rates and insurance, freehold Maori land rates, charitable status properties. When questioned by Radio New Zealand on the unaffordability of New Plymouth rates, the council spokesperson stated that if we can't afford our rates, we'll just have to sell up. Not a sympathetic view in sight from a person whose salary is paid for by us ratepayers. And the operating expenses at the council is 60% of our rates, which is a huge expense. Coming next to New Plymouth ratepayers are water rates. Council is stating that meters will save us money as we will be able to identify leaks. We all fall for that one. Don't expect rates to go down. Council is proposing 12 months of mock billing so that we will get used to the idea, and then the charges will begin. You will pay a fee for delivery of water even if you don't use water. Haven't we been paying rates over the decades to maintain our water services? This is a core service that our rates are meant to cover. I don't know if you remember the water pipe breaking a few years ago out and Bell Block residents had to go to water tankers to get decent drinking water. Some businesses had to stop trading until the pipe was fixed. Their overheads continued in business, but there was no recompense from council. This is just another example of our rates being squandered and not directed to the core services. Water, sewage, rubbish, roading, streetlights, libraries, parks, community halls, etc. Core services. We have a grand design for a sports hub at the racecourse, which was originally going to house several sports. It was a multi-hub, but is now limited to 6 indoor basketball courts at the cost of approximately $70 million borrowed money. At the moment, rumours are swirling that the New Plymouth District Council failed to get a resource consent for this project, so fortunately it's delayed. And the latest thing, as Debbie stated, is the lights that are meant to go on the corner of Robyn and Coronation Ave in order for this project to go ahead to make traffic safe. Wouldn't that have been part of a feasibility study? I mean, a normal private business would actually have all of these problems ironed out and costed before they actually went through to the stages. And the amount of money that's gone has been wasted so far just on consultation, engineering reports. We know how council loves to waste our money. Another cost just added to this I've just said that. Another $40 million of expenditure is planned to complete the cycleway to Waitara. Now this is an interesting plan. The cycleway is meant to travel along the inland airport boundary until it reaches Mahuitahi Road. Now that's the road that travels along the southern side of the Wyoming River, if anybody knows that, all the way to Waitara. At this point, the cycleway could travel down Mahuitahi Road, which travels towards the coast on a currently unsealed track to where it will reach a perfectly structured bridge designed to carry a water main, but the surface is perfectly sealed for cyclists and pedestrians, and that bridge joins up with Brown Road and off at Tottles into Waitara. But wait, instead of turning left at Mahuitahi Road, New Plymouth District Council wants us to turn right, and at this point a power site will be purchased, a brand new $18 million bridge will be constructed with ratepayers' money, and the track presumably will then follow down through farmland to be purchased, back down to the bridge, the other side of the bridge, and back into Waitara. So our money, folks, it's easy for somebody else to spend it. As a community, this and previous councils have committed us to $400 million worth of debt. Lenlai, $125,000 a week, Pukeariki, $175,000 a week, and the interest costs $385,000 a week. And we're going to borrow more money. The council did get asked recently how they could save some money. I would have said close Lenlai, personally. But the suggestions were, we could close the pool on a public holiday and whatnot. So if you go into Lenlai and count the people and go to the pool on a public holiday and count the kids, you'll see where the usage is. The other thing is our infrastructure is in dire need of maintenance, and yet we commit money to pet vanity projects until something breaks. And then we have to borrow more money. A well-run business has a repairs and maintenance or asset replacement schedule, but it appears that our council doesn't have that because they're constantly borrowing money for repairs. Are you aware that the New Plymouth District Council owns the New Plymouth Airport under a management structure called a council-controlled organisation? 100% owned by council, so us, the ratepayers, but we can't access business dealings because of the way the company is structured. We can't even submit a local government official information request to get information. So this is our money and we can't get anything on it. This business is funded by debt. Yet the airport company just built a big flash lookout with money that could have repaid some of this debt. Be aware that our council favours this management structure for the new water entity that they're planning, which can borrow huge amounts of money through a CCO. Do we really need more debt? But with no transparency, so there you go. Another issue is council signing us up to UN projects like the sustainability projects whilst building unused cycleways that just disrupt traffic. These cycleways are meant to improve our health and reduce carbon emissions. Sounds like a two-a-year. Yeah, right. I believe it is time to put the brakes on this council spending and look at the reality of ratepayers trying to pay their rates. New Plymouth has had times of real prosperity, and that is the time for niceties. But at the moment isn't one of them. It's not just New Plymouth feeling it, but we need to pay attention. I'm running for council on a platform of austerity. Let's audit council spending, cut non-essential projects, reduce bureaucracy, and reconsider costly affiliations like local government New Zealand. We'll prioritise reliable infrastructure and transparency, making New Plymouth affordable again. I'm asking for your vote to build a council that works for the ratepayer, a New Plymouth that is affordable, and we create a great community. And I would just like to add on to Debbie's talk about the STV. There's a lot of other people obviously running, so you think, oh, we'll only vote for 5, we'll only have 5 councillors. It might not be a bad idea. But there are other people who are going to go out and they have to get their core followers. And hopefully you guys are thinking seriously about maybe we do have something to offer here tonight. So something to think about. Thank you very much, and I would now like to introduce our guest speaker, Robyn, who's the expert of experts.
That's a bit of a hard act to follow, I think. I've come here today to talk about the Water Done Well and what they're looking at doing as far as our water entities are concerned. Or closer. Okay, I've got to talk closer because we're required. Does anybody, and has anybody, had a look at the website to understand what they're proposing to do with our water infrastructure? Yep. Easy to understand? The core issue with it being is our council is a favoured option, wants to take our water infrastructure and put it into a council-controlled organisation. Now, the minute that actually occurs, we lose visibility of what goes on. We lose the ability to affect how they're going to do it, and we lose control of money. Now, currently, as the ladies have pointed out, we have $406 million worth of debt. Now, that debt's increasing, particularly with all of the projects that they're doing and how they're going about it. Now, when they take our water assets, which are worth super $1 billion, give or take 20-30 million here or there, that debt doesn't go with them. So we have our debt in our council, and then we have our assets for our council. We no longer have control of those assets. Now, it was briefly touched upon earlier about the thermal dryer and the management aspect of that. Now, that project is blown out. Having some inside knowledge on what's going on, it's been run very, very badly by council. So your council-elect, your council internal, have not managed the project within a budget. It doesn't help anybody because it increases core debt. We currently don't pay core debt, we pay interest only. So it's something that you need to consider. When they take our water assets and put it into a CCO, over a period of time, they're going to borrow money against it. So with the inference that if you look at your rates demands at the moment, there are targeted rates for water, which equates to circa $1,300 per urban household in this New Plymouth district area. They haven't put those targeted water rates aside. Where is the proof and evidence that they've done so? Where is the proof and evidence that they've controlled the deficit of what they've done? There is none, and you won't get it because they won't offer it. And even when you ask for it, they will delay it. So when you look at the two entities, you have $409 million and growing on this side. In 10 years' time, they have the ability to borrow $700 million against your revenue on a CCO. That has to be paid for. How do you think it's going to affect your bottom line with your rates? It's going to go up. And within the space of probably 5 years, what you pay in rates today will be doubled because you're paying two entities. The council will neither confirm or deny that they will take that $1,300 off your baseline of rates. Where's the evenness? Where is the balance to that? They've got $406 million in growing to pay for. They can't afford to take that off you. They can't afford to say, oh, it's going to the water entity, we'll do it in that direction. Now, I don't know whether anybody's had the time to read the Water Services Delivery Plan. It's rather a weighty little document. It is designed with the information coming through in such a manner that you probably need an accountant to look at it for you, or you need to understand how they actually run their books. I had a very interesting conversation with a gentleman earlier this evening surrounding some of that. Now, on the basis of how they are allocating rates, it is quite conceivable under the government auspices that you can be charged up to 2.2% of your income per household as an acceptable usage of money for water. They're basing that on an average income of $113,000 per year. Tell me what a pensioner gets paid. Yeah. So going to pay it? You know, you're being pushed out of your homes now, and they want to charge you more. Now, part of the issue that I have with the way that they want to set up the CCO is how they want to manage it. Now, the inference that they're putting out in their documentation is very blurry and very vague, to say the least. On average, you've got circa $1,700 per household per year. On top of that, you've got OPEX and CAPEX costs. Now, for the first 5 years, that entity is going to run at a loss. They haven't indicated how much that's going to cost, who's going to manage it, how the levels are going, how they are going to define who happens to be an expert and who is not. How do people get elected to the council? How's that going to work? How are they going to select their board? How is that going to work? What are they deemed experts? Who's an expert in water management? Who's an expert in how the facilities work? You will have no say in who they select. So be mindful of that. So you're going to be sitting in a position with your asset that we have paid for and will continue to pay for, of which they're going to borrow against and borrow more against. And this will cover the district. So it's not just us. Now, when you look at it in context, they're talking about harmonising the water rates. So currently, if they go ahead with this option, Stratford District people are going to get thumped very, very hard with water rates. They don't pay a lot just now, but they combine the entities, they're going to get nailed with it. Hara, same basis. Now, how many of those people that live in those areas have the ability to fund that kind of money? I'd say few. You might have a couple of rich farmers sitting in the background with the cows, but on an average, most of those people work in meatworks, they work in dairy, they're working in other areas which don't pay $113,000 or plus per year. So how does that work? This is something that we need to be focused on, because the council have to submit to government in September what their preferred option is. To give a lead with it, Christchurch Council have already come out and said no, it's staying within council. But Auckland Council don't have to worry about it because Auckland already have water services. And when they started that, unfortunately I was still in Auckland, but I did miss the payments. But contacts I've got up there have said basically within 2 years their rates doubled. It's going to go up. Now we have the ability within our own council to maintain what we have. There is no need for us to outsource and create another layer of management, of boards, of directors, of reference pieces to manage our assets. But what we do need to have is accountability with our council of where the money goes. There is enough money on the basis that they say, on average, they're spending $44 million a year on our water assets. On the calculations I've done, plus or minus, they're collecting circa $75 million a year in water rates. Give or take, I might be up a little bit or down a little bit. But there is a surplus in there. So if we have to go into 4 years' time and have one of our water facilities upgraded, changed, managed, there should be $100 million sitting in there to do that. At the moment, where's the money gone? Does anybody know how they're using it? Is it being cross-pollinated into other projects? Now, to keep it in council, there's a couple of things that will need to be done. We need to clean them out. We need to have experts in the departments managing the facilities. Not a bureaucrat, not somebody that's risen through the ranks that, oh, you know, I know how to push paper and I started off as a secretary and I can manage people. We need experts. There are experts in our community that know how to do this. So we have to start standing up and saying, no, we don't want that. We want it kept here. We want the asset that we're paying for. We don't want the excess debt. If it means, as our delightful three behind us have said, we have to have an austerity budget, we have to have an austerity budget. Stop spending money. It's really great to have nice to haves. It's great to be able to say, let's do this. We can't. We don't have it. So if we want to be a successful territory, if we want to get back so where our kids have something to look forward to, you've all got to start really having a good look at what they're proposing. Now, some of it can be stopped, some of it might not be able to. But if we continue to allow the debt increase to go on, to separate our assets and create a bigger debt, where is the hope? So I hope that you will all have a really good look at the people that you have the potential to vote for. Think about what they actually stand for. You need to understand what they're going to do, what they're capable of doing. What we also need to be doing is getting every person of voting age to understand the long-term consequences. Because this debt we have today isn't going anywhere, it's getting bigger. Now, if you had a house where you paid $500,000 for it, and you had a $400,000 mortgage, and someone said, oh, you don't need that house, I'm taking it away, oh, but you can still pay your debt, how's that going to work? And this is what they're trying to do. So I think, please do some research, please have a look into what's going on, talk to people about it. We only have one chance, and this is it. So you need to make that effort, you need to talk politics, which we all don't like doing. We need to talk at local government level about what our expectations are. Because believe me, in the next 10 years, we're all going to be sitting there going, now what do we do? So take consideration, people, please. Think about it. If you've got questions, ask them. If it's a case that we all need to turn up to council and say we want to be heard, we all need to do that. One way or another, our voices must be heard because we pay for it. Now, I had, just as a back reference, I had a lovely discussion with our mayor not that long ago, and his answer was, oh, look at the legacy we're leaving our children. My answer to that was quite simple. We're leaving a legacy of debt. We have our children, of which I have a 16-year-old, talking about leaving the region already. There's no jobs. So you had a whole class of 17-year-olds leave school last year to go to what? There's another whole lot leaving this year to go to what? There will be the same thing next year. So we are our children's future today. We are the ones that have to make some hard decisions, and we've got to stand by it. So, as I said, I hope you will really consider very carefully what you want to do, who you want to vote for, and what outcomes you want to have. We get one chance, and this is it. Thank you all for listening to me.
Right. I want to hold you on. Now, there are probably millions and millions of questions. I just make the point is we have done a lot of work behind the scenes for this. I think we've been on to a lot of meetings. Done a lot of official information at the press, been around, and there's a lot of people. But I am not going to profess to know everything. Right. Any questions, please ask away, let me know.
Any sort of resource brief summary of the big blowout items that are coming up that we can make a hand of, because we're certain of we can pass something really well.
Yeah.
Yes, there is. There is, we looked at it today, Robyn's got the answer for that. It was called, where are you, Robyn?
Sorry.
Robyn!
Oh, you're not selling anything, you know? What are you selling down there? Oh,
So that information we looked at this afternoon, what was that called?
Water Delivery Services Plan. It's quite a lot of pages. It's quite boring to read. There is a lot of information in here that, even from my perspective, you need an accountant to go through and actually understand it. If I can be so bold, Mr. Chard, he has a fairly good understanding of exactly how this works as well. You need to understand the connotations of where the money goes. It's all about how it's used, why it's used, and what the surpluses are.
Doesn't the CEO have a lot to do with that? He seems to have a lot of power.
In the council?
Yeah.
Yes, he does.
And he's not elected. He's
No, he's not. He's on a contract.
So how does he get sanctioned? How does the focus?
I think, from my understanding of how it works, the only way that we can pull the reins in on circumstances like that is by our councillors and our mayor saying no. They control, to a great degree, the ability of the spending of the council. Kevin Moretti knows quite a bit about this as well. So, for us to stop the council spending, for us to change the dynamics within it as to where money goes, you have to have people sitting around the council table that say, no, we do not want our money spent like this. We do not see the value in spending our money like this today. As I said, you can look at, and we can use the sports hub as a prime example. For some people, that is a huge benefit. There's no denying that. For the majority of the public today, there is no benefit. It is more money that we have to pay for that we can't afford. You've got to be pragmatic in some respects about how money siphons around in the circles. So what is most important today is getting our infrastructure up to speed. There's money that needs to be spent on our water infrastructure, there's underground pipework that needs to be attended to, there's another water treatment plant for drinking water that's got to be upgraded, the Inglewood facility, and I think it's the Waitara one. They need money spent on them. Now, within our organisation of our council, if we start looking at how we're spending the money and we start consolidating that, we can turn around and say, well, actually, we don't need that today. We don't need that tomorrow. That money needs to be spent on necessities. Necessities mean we have to keep costs down. We have to keep people in their homes. You can't afford to hit the pension age, owning your home, getting paid $25,000 to $30,000 a year and losing half of that in rates and water. No one can do that. You've got to be pragmatic about the future. We today are the ones that dictate that future. Now there's certain things we can do, there's certain things we can't. We don't know the state of the contracts that they've got into play regarding some of the spending that they want. If they were doing it on a proper commercial contract, there's out clauses. I don't know whether they're sitting there, and I don't think anybody that is sitting on the outside looking will be privy to that information. We need to know, because if there's an out clause in there, it means we pay a percentage of what that contract is, and we say, thanks, you can pause that, we're not doing it now. Contract over, done. Yes, it costs us a bit of money now, but it will save us a ton of money at the other end of it. So you've got to look at things more pragmatically and say, well, this is what we need. How do we want to go about that? Now, there are certain things that we may or may not have control over before the elections. Again, until we're in a position where you've got access to all of that information, can't tell. We don't know. It's like turning around and saying, oh, we want cyberways stopped. Well, it's a nice idea to stop the cyberways, but what's the contract and what's the terms of that? You don't know. And because there is no transparency on those contracts, there's no transparency on how that whole field is actioned within council, how do you find out?
Obviously you notice that how fast these projects are being done. Some of these people genuinely know what's coming. Excuse my language. They know their ass is on the line. And it's a headlong rush to get things done. Case in point, you mentioned the Art Street, Molesworth Street roundabout. You also mentioned the proposed plan for those traffic lights. Now, as Robyn has said, we can deal with some of those people around that council table. But here it goes. We've all been sitting in there long enough to know it's not just those people around that council table. There's a certain level of bureaucracy in that operational branch of council are pushing the same agenda. A bit like government departments, you may have heard. During the Ardurian era, the public service kind of rose in huge numbers. Now, amongst those government departments, much like council, there are people who are pulling the strings. Councils come and go, but some of those bureaucrats remain forever, playing the same game, whatever the mayor, whatever the council. And we already have seen that in a number of things, watching what's going on. Now, dare I say it, those people are going to be hard to shift. There is a level of incompetence. There is, dare I say it, I'm repeating myself, a level of stupidity. But to try and move it.
Yeah, Jonathan Marshall's my name. I have no doubt at all that there is areas that we can save money to council. I have no doubt at all that maybe there's some better ways of doing certain things. However, some of the elected councillors we have now are the result of our previous elections. And we're the ones who put the ones that are in there now. I'm not in full agreement with many of them, but I will admit we're responsible for putting them there in the first place. I have some difficulty with some of the figures that you quoted with regards to water, because legally and statutory, a council can only charge according to the cost structure for what it creates for its water and wastewater. And those figures clearly found in the LTP as what their costs have been and what they propose to go forward. And the rates charged are accordingly. We currently all pay a water rate. We all currently pay a wastewater rate. And one of the reasons why the council is looking at a CCO and effectively a trust is largely because of what happened under the previous central government, who wanted to take our water from us, and we would have to give them that water and retain the debt. What the council's trying to do is separate it from the council bureaucracy and create an opportunity where local government central government can't take it off us.
Do you understand what a CCO is?
I know exactly what CCO is.
So you are taking an asset, you are layering bureaucracy above it for management of it, which has to be paid for.
That same management exists currently right now.
Why would
So
you
we're not
pay for a
creating-
larger sector of management, which is layered in 4 tiers, which costs you more money?
No, the management is there now. And when you create a CCO for, let's say, the water, the guys who currently working as a manager in the water now don't stay with the NPDC, they go across to the CCO. And when you talk about combining, it probably won't happen, but combine with the Stratford District Council and the Southampton District Council, effectively you can actually reduce some of the managers, and that's what the proposal is.
Oh, whatever.
Next question, I'd say.
I would dispute exactly what you're saying, having seen what's been done before. My opinion, you can give your opinion and you're entitled to
I
that.
totally agree
What I
with
would
you saying,
suggest, what I would suggest you do is you go through and you read and you analyse what's in the Water Services Delivery Plan, because it says something completely opposite.
Now we read that, okay?
Yeah,
So
it says it completely opposite to what you're actually
you
saying.
talk about core structures as being in there, you mention the library, and then you start denying the Pukariki as something expensive that we paid, and yet they're the library.
It has part of it as a library and part of it's a museum,
Yeah, but largely most of that goes into the library.
does it?
Yes,
So how is it running at $175,000 per week loss?
you're talking about staff and replacement of books and technology that puts into place that allows us to be able to read on our phones the books that they provide.
So what about the depreciation on the asset?
Yeah, well, there is
And
a
the
depreciation,
maintenance
I
of
said
it?
that's still an expense.
It is, but it's not accounted for.
It's not what, sorry?
They haven't accounted for that. You need to
The
have a
depreciation of
look at
assets,
books.
the depreciation is on the books.
But where's the money?
The depreciation.
Where's the money being put aside?
Where's the money?
I don't want to debate accounting
Yeah,
because
we need to give somebody else to shake it, anyway. Yeah. Anybody else?
Does anybody know what's happened to the district council's investment fund that the proceeds of the Petrocross sale went into?
Well, you
Does
talk
that
about the
still
Professional
exist?
Investment Fund, PIF,
Yeah.
right, that's still there, but here's the reality. So our core debt is way more than that. And on that basis, because we owe, as Robyn said, $406 million plus and growing, I think that PIF is 399. So what that means is any money they borrow from here on out, because that equity is less, the money borrowed, the interest rates go up. And our credit rating as a council, our AAA rating is gone. That's basic mathematics.
So they have to keep the fund going.
Well, yeah, again, the idea being, if you look on the back of your rates demand there. So, on the back of your rates demand, they get about, I think it's about $10 million odd dollars off that a year. And if you look on your rates, yep, it tells you on the bottom page how much the PIF fund is giving your rates per quarter. It sounds awful, I know, but in the long term, we are better to probably keep that rather than sell it off. And the jury's out on that one. But just increasing debt, just getting silly. And I don't agree with this idea of amalgamating our resources. We've used the example of the airport authority. We've actually put in official information at request for what's going on out there. And again, as people said, because it's a CCO, it's run as a business, we can't find out. We can't find out. We hear all this gossip. Again, you mentioned the cost of that lookout. Words around the town, 400,000, 500,000. We can't actually find out.
Who paid for the solar farm that's been got up by the airport that's going to run all the power?
The $32 million solar farm,
Yeah, that they reckon it's going to run
you
the
want to keep
airport.
that? What do you think?
Keep going. I want
That's
to
what
talk
you're
about
talking
the local
about.
government funding agency.
All right, okay. $32 million now. How much do you know about solar farms? Again, the Mayor is a major leading figure with local government New Zealand. He's also signed us up to some climate change covenant because that's his personal interest. That's fine. Yeah.
How much money does he get paid off it?
Again, make the point, local government New Zealand, you probably all know that like that Auckland and Christchurch don't belong. Western Bay of Plenty and Tasman also don't belong. They've bailed out. Now, a lot of stuff politically comes through from local government New Zealand. It's not just an oversight, it's a bit like our United Nations. I don't want to get into conspiracy theories here. Again, it's a big voice club.
I think overall, folks, I've given gratitude to Ratepayers Alliance. I was talking to Gareth Green this week and last week. This week's one was, Gareth, the problem we face is that 406 million, in 5 years' time looking at your LTP, is going to be $1 billion. My rates are going to go from 9.5 to 20,000 in 5 years. That's where the problem is. And the only way we can turn that around after all our discussions with the executive is the councillors around the table. They're the ones that ultimately make the decisions. But think very carefully, because the Local Government Act is going to trip you up. There's things that you want to do and you won't be able to do in your heart. So it's that debt in 5 years' time that we're going to have that really concerns me.
I think, adding to what Kevin has said, there are things contractually in the contracts they've got out on what they want to spend and the projects that they want to do. There are issues within the Local Government Act itself, as far as council going out to consideration by the public and the fact that they can make their own decision without you. They don't need your consent to do it. There's a raft of issues within national government legislation that affects local government. That's a bigger beast to buy. What we've got to look at, with due respect, is it's that old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So we've got to pick the battles, we've got to look at things that we can control, we've got to look at the understanding of where the money goes and make appropriate decisions. The beginning step is to get the right councillors and the right mayor in place to prohibit further wasteful spending. And I use that term wasteful considered. There's a lot of waste. We have to make sure that it stops. Now you can turn around and believe, disbelieve, have your own personal opinions, and everybody is entitled to that. What you're not entitled to do is ram it down people's throats. You have a choice to make. Make a wise choice. Make a choice that works for you. Make a choice that works for your children. Make a choice that works for your grandchildren. But remember, whichever way you choose, there are consequences. And do you want to live with them? So you've got to think about it.
Now, I'll just mention that Local Government Act 2012, isn't it? Now, some of you might remember last year that Simeon Brown was the Minister for Local Government, and he initiated a review of the Local Government Act. And there were 4 well-beings that he was going to deal with, particularly around consultation. That was all meant to be done before October this year. Now, Mr. Luxon has now taken Simeon Brown from local government and put him elsewhere. And we now have Simon Watt. And the whole momentum and impetus about reviewing that Local Government Act is ground to a halt. We were really, really looking forward to some change. But that's, again, been stopped.
I was just going to talk about where our money comes from when we borrow it. We borrow it from the LGFA, Local Government Funding Agency. So we're not as a council, or when I say we, it's open, the council has to borrow the money through that funding agency. And I believe there's 17 member councils, I might be wrong there, but councils around New Zealand that belong to this. Now, if one of these councils defaults on its debt, we basically underwrite, all the other councils underwrite that debt. So we can put a stop to us spending, or well, we hopefully slow down the spending that's happening with council. But any other council that is borrowing off that funding agency and defaults on their debt, we as ratepayers are liable. Our council pays it, and of course, how do they pay it? They put our rates up. So that's just something to be aware of as well.
I don't know whether you're aware, but Auckland City Council stepped outside that, and there was a bit of a furore in the papers at one point in time. They've actually borrowed money directly offshore, without going through local government funding, and without going to the government. Now, that changes the dynamics for them, and it changes the dynamics, I believe, within the local government funding agency and also within local government New Zealand itself. There would be ways around it, but it's something, again, consideration needs to be given to, but it needs to be given to our councillors that get elected, our mayor that gets elected, to look into it and make changes. Things don't have to stay the same, things can change, but we've got to have the people there with the knowledge to be able to look into it and do that. It's the choice you make. So again, choose wisely. There's consequences. We need to have the right people. We need to have people that have knowledge. Gone are the days where I think, and I've had this conversation with my local MP, gone are the days when anybody should be able to stand for a position without any knowledge of how it operates, whether that be fiscal, whether that be HR, whether that be structural. People need to understand the process they have to work with it. We need people with the intellect to do that. It's not a job for everybody. So you need to think about it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
That's why I'm not standing.
Neither am I.
Anybody else? I'm just kind of conscious of the time. You've been very, very patient. Appreciate the attendance and appreciate the enthusiasm as well. Thank you very much.
And tell everybody to go out and vote, because 60% of people didn't vote last election. That's why we got what we got.
Don't forget our next meeting is the 28th at Hancock. We're going to have next meeting. What time? 6:30, voting in front, 28th. Max will be speaking. Thank you.
What you guys need to do is front row or something, you know, something where, so you're all talking the same thing.